on the question of how the Occupy movements are expanding the national conversation in the United States, I think it's important to look back for a moment in time. And if you look back to the late 1970s or 1980, what you realize is that a lot of the framework for the national conversation in the United States over the past 30 years was set by the election of Ronald Reagan back in 1980. Reagan's supporters and Reagan came in with a strong message that the economy is broken in large part because they argued there's too much government. We need to free corporations and the free market in order to create prosperity. Get government out of the way, get rid of regulations, and let the free market reign. And this was the dominant philosophy for 30 years. And they also argued that they acknowledged that inequality would probably rise in the country if you did that. But they said it wasn't important because we're an opportunity society and everyone, no matter how poor, has the opportunity to rise. So inequality isn't important so long as everyone can aspire to be a millionaire. And it's interesting, that was also what was pushed on the rest of the world, and of course many in the rest of the world reacted negatively and they rebelled against that overall framework. But in the U.S. it really dominated until 2 months ago. And I think a lot of what the Occupy movement did was it said, partly it was the embodiment of the antithesis of that overall frame. It was filled with young people who were smart, who'd studied hard, who'd gone to college, and who couldn't find a job, and who were saddled with large debts that they couldn't get out of. And so the myth that we're an opportunity society and that anyone can rise has really been destroyed by Occupy. This week, the cover of Time magazine has a picture of a broken ladder on the front, and it contains, it's Time magazine, and it's filled with the statistics that show that poor people in this country are now stuck being poor. They can't rise. And once you break that myth that anyone can rise, then the fact that we're so grotesquely unequal, and our society has become, over these 30 years, one of the most unequal in the world, but once it's now clear to most people that you can't rise, then that inequality becomes something that's really a problem, that's bad. And so I think the main thing the Occupy movement has done is it's raised the issue of inequality, of the 99% versus the 1%, and it has helped people understand why this is bad for most people and why it's corrosive of our democracy. And so that's a huge impact, much bigger than influencing a specific piece of legislation. I think this movement has begun to shift what has been a 30-year conversation in this country onto a very different track, and one that ultimately will be much better for the people and for the country. I'm sure your listeners know over 1 million people have watched the video of the University of California at Davis police officers pepper spraying students who were sitting calmly on the ground. I think that the impact on the public is it's more a moral response that people have than a legal one. The majority of people who know about this think it's outrageous that the police would do this. It was clearly an excessive use of force, and it has drawn more sympathy to the protesters. So I think it matters less whether that particular act was legal or not. They're now reviewing the question of whether the police were in any way provoked, and what we've seen from all those videos show that they weren't. So that would make it illegal, but much more important, it's seen as grotesquely excessive, and that's really important. I think the bigger question of the shutdown of some of the encampments by police and by mayors, again, I think across this country people are seeing this as an excessive use of force. People are using their democratic rights, and most people think it's wrong. I think this movement is going to be very important, not just in the weeks to come, but in the months to years to come. It really has changed the framework of debate here. It's introduced inequality and the casino nature of Wall Street into the center of the conversation. So that will continue. What the movement changes into, what it evolves into, no one knows. It's possible that some people will pick up on its themes to push for a third party. Certainly people are picking up on its themes to push for a very different kind of candidate running in the 2012 elections at many different levels. Some people will use this momentum in this space to push for specific pieces of legislation. So I think it will have many different manifestations, but there's no question now that it will have a very big impact on public debate and on the future of this country.